So as I've spoken about many times, press-resistant midfielders are becoming essential at the top level in the modern game. It's why Frankie de Jong has been so heavily pursued by Erik ten Hag, as having a midfielder who can receive the ball in the defensive third under pressure and bypass the press by themselves via a drop of the shoulder and a burst of acceleration to carry the ball forward can completely change how a side attacks and how the opposition presses. But with the Frankie de Jong Manchester United deal still unclear, I think there's a Premier League midfielder who could provide Ten Hag with a similar sort of skill set. That player is Wolves' 24-year-old Portuguese midfielder Matheus Nunes, who most people will probably say has been underwhelming since coming to the Premier League with Wolves at the start of the season. And if we look at his FBref report just in the Premier League this season in comparison against every other midfielder in the league, you can kind of see why, as he only ranks around the 30th percentile for his passes into the final third and into the penalty area, and all the way down in the 16th percentile for his overall progressive passes. From a statistical point of view, defensively he looks decent, ranking quite high for the volume of tackles he is completing, but nothing really that impressive, and he also ranks fairly low for things like interceptions. And so at this point in the video, you're probably wondering why I'm even talking about Matheus Nunes given these deficiencies in his game. However, my view is that in the transfer market, you either go for the perfect player in the role you want and are prepared to spend big money, as United will have to do if they want to get De Jong or Bellingham, or you take a risk on a less expensive option by assessing that they are either massively underrated or have huge untapped potential. And I think that Matheus Nunes falls into both of those categories. And to be fair to Nunes, in the first half of the Premier League season, he was in a pretty dire Wolves side under Bruno Lage, and that only really turned around Christmas with Julian Lopetegui's arrival. And so if you look at Nunes' FBref report for Sporting last season, when compared against every other midfielder in Liga NOS, it does look substantially better for metrics like passes into the final third and into the penalty area, his volume and success of his short and medium passes, as well as his overall progressive passes as well. And he's even ranking higher for his ball carrying. Now obviously you have to factor in that Nunes was in a more dominant side in a lesser quality league, but I think if he was to move to a club like Manchester United, he would return to that sort of output. And so to me, Nunes is a classic case of a player who made the wrong move at a pivotal stage in his career. He's in his mid-20s, and to me he needs to be under a coach who prioritises a possession-orientated style, so that he can develop his progressive passing, making him a lot more effective against deep blocks, but also a manager that can most effectively get the best out of his ball carrying as well. And whilst Julian Lopetegui could easily be this sort of manager for Nunes in the long run, Bruno Lage definitely wasn't. But the reason I'm even suggesting Nunes as a possible target for United is mainly because of his press resistance and ball carrying. He's one of the best midfielders in Europe when it comes to being able to receive the ball under pressure and turning on a dime before driving forward, having the athleticism to race away from pressing players, and so he's an incredibly effective ball progression weapon on his own, as seen as he ranks in the 82nd percentile for his carries into the final third, the 77th for his progressive carries, and the 88th for his successful take-ons. Adding on to this, what I also really like about Nunes is his ability to do this in big games, as against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge earlier on this season, and Manchester City for Sporting in the Champions League last season, he was phenomenal at being an all-round central midfielder, circulating the ball efficiently in deeper areas, playing forward passes into players between the lines, but most importantly being able to receive the ball under pressure and carry it forward, together with the industry out of possession to cover ground and put in tackles in the centre of the park. And so I could see Nunes with his already top level ball carrying ability, which by the way is something incredibly hard to find to that level in a central midfielder, being an excellent option for Ten Hag in that deeper midfield position. He's definitely not the finished article, being nowhere near as good as De Jong in terms of his passing and breaking down deep defensive blocks, but he is physically dominant and athletic, and so if he was able to refine certain areas of his game, then I think he could become a world-class box-to-box midfielder, excelling alongside a sitting midfielder like Casemiro, but crucially he'd also provide the press resistance and ball carrying ability from those deep midfield positions that United have been crying out for, and I think really only the likes of De Jong, Kovacic and Camavinga, and maybe a few others who I've forgotten, are as good or better at Nunes at doing this. I would say ideally bringing in a starting central midfielder like Kovacic or De Jong alongside Casemiro, and Nunes being brought in as an alternative option would be the best for United, but obviously that may not be possible depending on what United's budget is for the summer, but I definitely think Nunes is one for United to watch out for, as I could see him having a similar sort of career trajectory to Moussa Dembele, elevating his level as he gets into his late 20s. Wolves did pay £42 million for him last summer, so I think you could probably get him for around £50 million million, which may be possible, maybe not. He hasn't exactly been a standout player in the Premier League, so maybe it's an offer that Wolves would consider. But even though he may be a slow burn, I think if he's at the right club, under the right manager, which I think Ten Hag is, then I think that Núñez can become a world-class midfielder.